Hey everyone, welcome in to another daily editorial here on the KE Report. I'm chatting with Matt Battiali, and we're talking battery technology, battery development, some of the news that has come out of the battery sector here. We all talk about lithium ion batteries, but there's a lot of development going on within this area. And it's moving quite quickly too. And I think it needs to move quite quickly for some of the plans that governments and even organizations have to continue to store energy and produce greener energy. Matt is the editor of the New Energy Investor, published under the Mangrove Investor website. Now, Matt, we talk about this new energy narrative. We've been talking about it for a couple of years. You brought up an article to me that was focused on sodium batteries from Michigan, challenging lithium's grip on this whole energy transition. We've also had news on solid state batteries being developed by, I believe, Toyota and other companies. I've talked to a company that's developing graphene aluminum ion batteries. Matt, from a high level view here, when you're looking at this battery segment that is growing, there's so much innovation here. How do you filter through what's real and what's just a news headline?
Thanks for having me, Corey. And you put your finger on the biggest problem as an investor is like, what do you do? Do you jump on the next big thing? I mean, lithium ion batteries have had the battery space locked down for a decade now. And so there's no real play on sodium. So I probably should take a step back and talk about why this is a big deal. So one of the reasons that lithium ion batteries have dominated the market, particularly with electric vehicles, is because you're able to make them small, right? So in our phones, in our laptops, and in our cars, a lithium ion battery can pack more energy in a smaller space. And that's great. The trade-off is they're dangerous, right? You can't put them in your check bag on airplanes because they're
They
they're
might blow
dangerous, and if
up.
they catch on fire, yeah, you can't put them out. I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but I had a laptop battery expand one time, pop the case, and that was kind of sketchy, a little scary. So one of the goals of kind of what everybody is searching for is a battery that is safer. So these sodium ion batteries, their role probably will be in kind of community scale, big energy storage because they don't have to be as energy dense because you're not trying to put them in a car, you're putting them in semi truck trailer sized units, and then they collect energy from wind farms and solar panels. So you don't have the same restrictions. But sodium is cheap, compared to lithium, and you don't need cobalt, which is great because cobalt's one of those limiting metals that you need for lithium ion batteries. You don't need it for the sodium ion batteries. So, when it comes to this new tech, it's safer and it's way cheaper. And so I think that we're going to see this being taken up pretty rapidly. So right now, that company that I sent you the link on was in Michigan. I think there's one in Switzerland and there's one in China. They're all kind of leading the pack on this sodium ion battery, and specifically to be, in support of the grid. One of the things that these utility scale batteries are going to do is they're going to smooth the grid out. That's one of the benefits that everybody talked about back in the arm waving days before we got to actually putting them out is, right now, if you look at electric rates, they cycle pretty dramatically. So at night, they're really low because nobody's using electricity. And in the daytime, especially like when you get up in the morning and then when everybody comes home from work, the rates spike and because demand spikes. And so typically what we do right now is when demand spikes and it exceeds our base load, we just turn on these natural gas jet turbine engines to generate the power that we need. And they're expensive. You can turn them off and turn them on, but they're expensive. But if you have a battery that can store power for when we need it and then discharge instead of using the natural gas jet engine, you can smooth rates out. And so that will do a couple things. One, it'll be better for all of us because we'll pay less money for our power, and it'll be much more efficient for utilities. And that's really the door. That was a difficult thing for lithium ion batteries to do because when you put a lot of these things in series, you significantly increase the risk of an issue. But with the sodium batteries, they're safer. And so you don't have the same issue. So there are a lot of benefits, and that's why people are racing to find the next new battery tech. The problem is for investors, how do you play it?
Exactly. How do you play it? But even before we get into that, you mentioned some of the battery data here being safety, one of the main concerns. But other things we hear is storage capacity. There's also charge rates and decharge rates. What sort of battery data do you think matters the most? Is it strictly just around safety?
No, I don't. I think there depending on you know, the utility, right? I think what we're going to see is you're going to see more than one type of battery. You think about batteries. I mean, we haven't changed our battery tech in 100 years. Lead acid batteries were that was all anybody used. That's what a battery was. The batteries in your car were lead acid. The batteries that you put in your Walkman were lead acid. And then suddenly lithium ion showed up with its ability to be recharged, and that was a big deal. For the compact battery needs, I think lithium ion is still going to stick around. But one of the things that ion batteries are able to do is discharge a lot of electricity quickly, and that's why they're being framed as ideal for community scale. Because when you want a lot of electricity in a short amount of time, some batteries like that just wrecks them. They overloaded. They can't do that. But the sodium ion batteries can do that. So I think you're going to see battery chemistry parse out kind of the way we saw hydrocarbon chemistry parse out, where kerosene is jet fuel, gasoline for cars, diesel for trucks, and then that sort of thing. It wouldn't surprise me at all that you kind of work these out into niches, and then what that's going to do though is take a big bite out of the lithium ion industry.
Let's talk about the investment angle then, because we have companies, individual companies that are focused on developing new batteries. We also have large players in the car space that are developing their own batteries. And we have just simply, I believe, other large companies looking at battery technology. What's the trade here, Matt? If people want to invest in the development of batteries and this move that does seem to be coming, where do you think they go?
Well, my basic trade right now is I am short lithium miners, short lithium exploration, and I'm long utilities. And people are going to say, it's high interest rates, Matt. You never buy utilities during higher interest rates. And my argument is, I think that there's two things that are happening right now. One is we're projecting much higher electricity demand in the future because of what we talked about before with AI and electric vehicles. The demand for power is going to grow faster over the next 5 to 10 years than it's grown in the last 25 years. So we want to be long power producers, particularly big power producers that have like a large footprint. And you have these sodium batteries that will be starting to be deployed. The utility companies that are in that storage, that community grade or community scale battery industry, they're the ones that I want to be part of because they're going to benefit from these lower costs and the flattening out of the rate curves. I think that's going to be a huge benefit. They're going to be able to market that heavily, add more customers. So that's a good thing. And then from a lithium, lithium got really hot and then it kind of died. And I'm just afraid that a lot of these projects that were being developed based on high lithium prices are going to get absolutely clobbered as demand falls off for lithium and as the competition for lithium is going to be really tight. We've talked about this before. ExxonMobil is getting into the oil field brine lithium space, that's going to spread. It won't just be ExxonMobil. And honestly, even if it was, like their costs are going to be so much lower than everybody else's. It's really concerning to me. So that's my trade. I'm looking at big utility companies, big electric utility companies as kind of my play on this right now.
To that point about the lithium play here, I just had a company on Volt Lithium who's going to have a field plant put in the Delaware Basin to use some of those oil field just byproducts and use their DLE technology. So yes, that area is growing. What about other metals though that could play into battery development? You again mentioned sodium batteries at the start of this. Graphene is another metal that could be used. There's all kinds of other metals that get used in these batteries. Do you see any standing out as an investment opportunity?
Well, I'm a homer. I still think copper is the place to be, but I'm starting to really like graphite. I have to do more research there because you have to be careful when you get into commodities like graphite that they don't have a uniform price. They don't have a uniform product, right? So, graphite is a hard one to figure out, but I like it. It's just not, we're going to need it domestically, or actually you're going to need it in Canada, you're going to need it in the United States because again, you have the tailwinds of the tax benefits that say if you source your materials and your batteries from North America or a free trade partner, you get these massive tax breaks. So there are still huge tailwinds on batteries for consumers, but it requires you to source the material at home. And so, graphite companies that have the right product and that have the right economics, I like them a lot. I'm a copper homer, man. I'm buying copper companies. That's the one I still, you just can't get around it.
So is this all about North American companies, North American potential here because of how active governments have been saying that they want domestic supply?
Well, I think that that's the low-hanging fruit, particularly for my readers who are they're mostly Americans with some Canadians. Yeah, there just weren't that many around. And then, when you have the political risk that we've seen, where Colombia just shut down a gold mining company, or it was a gold mine, I think it was Agnico's gold mine. You had the Cobre Panama get shut down. I mean, that's 1% of the world's copper. So, and we've seen this in the past when commodity prices start to go up, that's when politicians start to get, hey, why do we have this foreign company in here mining our gold or mining our copper? That should be ours. We should take that back from them. And then the rule of law is fine, except when it's inconvenient. And it's shocking how inconvenient the rule of law will get the higher commodity prices go.
That's a very good point there, Matt. Now, what about other catalysts for the battery area? A lot of focus being on EVs, but as you said, it's a big market out there just for cities, for countries to be able to hold in their energy and store it. Where do the catalysts come from?
I think the biggest catalyst right now, particularly for those sodium ion batteries, is the amount of solar and wind development going on. That story is not over. There's still massive amounts of alternative energy being built. I mean, I was looking at a utility, NextEra Energy, is deploying about $38 billion this year and next year on new development projects. And they need batteries. Like you either pair your wind and solar with natural gas turbines, or you pair them with batteries, because, solar works great half the time and the wind power works great as long as the wind's blowing. So you need to be able to capitalize on those energy sources when the time is right and store the excess power for when the time is wrong. And so really that's the biggest catalyst that I see. EVs have the kind of the demand certainly in Europe and the US has slowed somewhat. I believe it's still booming in China and Asia, but that I think is going to be the lithium market more so than these alternatives unless and until like the solid state batteries break through. And then when you see one of the major car makers switch out of lithium ion and into a solid state or a new battery chemistry, that's when you're gonna, that'll be a big deal. And then we'll go and look, dig into that a little bit and see who's making the pieces and look for investment opportunities there. The other investment opportunity that I see is recycling. I'm a fan of battery recyclers. There are a few around. They've gotten absolutely obliterated, but there's going to be that is an industry that is going to boom. There aren't enough of them around, and so I see that as a huge opportunity for investors right now.
What has your eye in the recycling area? Because one of the issues sometimes is that it just costs a lot to recycle some of these batteries. But look, we hear about how brick like these batteries can turn into when they're done, and you could actually recycle them if there was, I guess, a more economic way to do it all. What are you watching in terms of that whole recycling angle here?
Yeah, I mean, I there's an ETF that I kind of keep one eye on. I've had a few that they've honestly they've gotten their butts kicked pretty hard in the space lately, partly with the downturn in the value of lithium. Um, Man, there's one Li-Cycle. So Li-Cycle Holdings is a New York stock exchange listed LICY. And then another one I liked was Electra Battery Metals, which is on NASDAQ listing ELBM. But Li-Cycle is the one I like the most. And I'm telling you, man, they got absolutely hammered. But these guys are building out an excellent infrastructure. They started in North America. Actually, I believe they started in Canada, maybe Ontario. They're moving into Europe now. So they have a hub and spoke process. We're not, I don't have these guys in my portfolio right now because, like I said, they've been absolutely obliterated. And, I get concerned when a stock falls this hard, especially when it has a US listing. And these guys are on the New York Stock Exchange. They're 65 cents. Their financials aren't great. So this is one that it could get delisted, which is really it's a drag. But yeah, they're one to look at, or at least to keep on your watch list. And maybe just too soon, maybe just too early. But
Okay, now let's wrap it up by talking time frame for people that want to invest in this battery technology. It is moving, but it's one of those things that when will the rest of the world catch on? Will it turn into something like an AI trade where all of a sudden investors pile in? What's your general time frame or idea on time frame when you're making some of these investments in this battery tech and battery development?
yeah, I think of it in terms of nibbling and gobbling, and I'm nibbling right now. I don't think that battery tech has people's attention yet. I pay attention to it, but I use my dad as a gauge for investor sentiment, and he doesn't have any he doesn't have any interest in this right now. So that means we have time to kind of position ourselves. And like I said, when we look across the board, what's moving right now, I think utilities are going to move. Here's my general utility thesis. When interest rates were rising, utilities were getting hammered because, a lot of the investors that are in utilities are in them for yield. So if you can go down and get a safer investment with a comparable yield, people will do that. So, and when you have higher interest rates, utilities have to borrow a lot of money to do their capital programs. So their cost of borrowing goes up. So there's a lot of headwinds in a rising interest rate environment for utility companies. So what that means is now, you have a time when utility prices are down, yields are pretty good still, but you have a forecast for higher electricity demand, and you have battery tech that is going to improve utilities' lives. So it's not a direct investment in battery tech, but if these sodium batteries perform the way they they appear to be, and they start penetrating the market, the first beneficiaries that I see, especially if the producers are private, the first beneficiaries that we can buy are utility companies. So electrical utilities that have kind of a big footprint, a lot of wind and solar, and that are going to be installing batteries over the next couple of years, that's the place where I'm starting to invest.
All right, Matt, thank you. Very interesting conversation. This is still so early on, but it is a sector that is moving, and there's a lot of different players trying a lot of different things too, right? It's one of these that there might not just be one winner. As you said, there might be different uses for different batteries, but when we do see some of these larger companies with deep pockets start to enter these markets, they can truly change these markets too. So, I don't know. It's just such an interesting conversation. If any of you listening have any thoughts on different companies that you're invested in, please share those with myself and I'll pass those on to Matt. Maybe we'll even talk about them in future segments. Matt, thank you very much for your time. Always great chatting with you. We'll chat again in another couple weeks.
Cool. Thanks, Corey.